Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Commissioner Martha Schrader, and tonight I have the privilege of calling to order the July 30th, 2020 business meeting. Mr. Schmidt, our administrator, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. First, our staff support tonight, Mary Rathke, Clerk to the Board, Stephen Madcore, County Counsel, Dylan Blaylock, Garrett Teague, and Rich Marvin from Public and Government Affairs. Tonight, Chair Bernard is attending another meeting, and Vice Chair Schrader will be chairing this meeting. With that, roll call. Chair Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Okay, everybody's here. So now I would like to have us all say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so thank you everyone for that. Just a few announcements. We're holding this meeting virtually, and if you have joined us on the Zoom app for this meeting, and if you're interested in providing public comment, we will prompt you regarding how to do that when the time is right. Alternatively, you have the option of providing your comments to us live. And alternatively, anyone can send in a comment to be read during the public communication portion of our meeting over email. Just send it in at any time during the meeting by emailing clacconews, one word, at clackamas.us. Once again, clacconews@clackamas.us, and be sure to include your name and area when you email. So Gary, I'm going to hand it over to you for our COVID-19 updates and other issues.
Thank you, Chair Schrader. We'll start for our COVID-19 updates with Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management and Incident Commander of our Emergency Operations Center, to give an update. Go ahead, Nancy.
All right, thank you everyone, and good evening. So we'll talk about our numbers today, and whenever I talk about the increases are from Monday, between now and Monday. So for Oregon, there are 18,131 positives. That is up 1,043. 316 deaths, 380,508 negatives. Clackamas County has 1,339 positives, which is up 56 since Monday. We have 36 deaths now, which is up 2, 37,017 negatives. Multnomah County has 4,260 positives, which is up 221. There's 90 deaths in Multnomah County, which is up 8, and 83,749 negatives. Washington County has 2,700 positives, which is up 147, 22 deaths, and 53,746 negatives. Statewide, we have 150 COVID positives that are hospitalized, which is up 1 from Monday. We have 51 of those positives that are in ICU beds, which is up 7 from Monday. And we have 27 of those on ventilators, which is up 2. Statewide, there are 145 adult beds, ICU beds that are available out of 763 that are staffed. And we have now have 764 ventilators statewide. So some of the things we have going on here in the EOC, we're continuing our food box assembly for distribution next week. Just a sidebar here, last night about 5 o'clock, well, it was 5 o'clock, of course, in the evening, we found out that our refrigerator truck had went out, and our facilities management staff saved the day because I don't think I have a refrigerator big enough for all of that food. So lessons learned, we now have a backup plan in case the refrigerator is out. And we are looking for a new distribution site for the fall because we do think we're going to be needing a larger space for our food distribution. Our behavioral health team is working with school personnel regarding how to support kids and families going forward, especially into the fall. And public health is working with a farm worker employer that has 6 locations, and they're in the early stages of an outbreak investigation there. We also are working to add staff here in the EOC from other county departments to assist in the school planning in particular, because that will be very intense for probably 2 to 3 weeks. And we're hoping to have some people that have some detail work, pay attention to detail to help with those planning and looking at those. And now we'll talk about our metrics. And if I can have Dylan, please.
Somebody's keeps clearing their throat and I can't hear.
I'll try to speak up as well. So here are our metrics that came in this morning. And you'll see there that Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington County are now not meeting just 2 of the 6, which includes the percent of cases not traced to a known source in the last 7 days, which is now at 50%. And 81% of our cases are being followed up within 24 hours, and it should be 95% or above. Clackamas County is doing, it still only has 1 that we are not meeting, which is the percent of cases not traced to a known source, which is now 54%. Dylan, if you'll take us down to Multnomah County, please. So Multnomah County is missing 2 of the 4. They are at 68% here on the last column for the follow-up within 24 hours, and they are at 54% for the not known to not being able to trace to a known source. And Washington County, I believe, is only missing the same 1 that we are. Yes, so Washington County is at 41% here for the percent of cases not traced to a known source in the last 7 days. So I'll leave this up for a couple of minutes. Dr. Sarah Present could not make it this evening, but I'm happy to answer questions. We do have, obviously, we're going in the right direction, not only us as a county, but also here in the region. There's still a lot of concern about those not traced to a known source. And so, of course, our public health staff continues to work on that, and we continue to have training there on the public health staff as well, and trying to follow up with those contacts. So I'm happy to answer questions that you may have.
Mark DePaul has his hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Last week, last week, I believe I raised the concept of the idea of asking people that when they're getting their COVID test to maybe inquire or have a form they can fill out as far as trying to help identify some of those contacts they've been in with in case they do test positive that they could submit. And I've gotten a lot of feedback on that, and a lot of people think it's a pretty logical, constructive idea. And in further discussion, I kind of, in recollecting what we were talking about at that time, was trying to understand is when someone tests positive, let's just say, is that a new threshold for asking for it? Or because it seems like whatever barriers or thresholds would be there to ask on the day of the test would be, unless there's something I don't know about, would be the same thresholds or barriers that would be there after they test positive.
It really probably depends on the case. And I know that Dr. President did say that she had a similar idea and had taken it forward earlier and that it fell flat. I don't know that there would be more barriers. It really would be, are they willing to get the information at that point? And they could say, if I'm positive, I will tell you then. I mean, there's that possibility. But I'm going to look at Mr. Madcourt too. I don't think there's anything legal that would keep asking those questions at that point, but.
Right. As every day goes by, I mean, people's memory gets shorter and shorter. And if it's 7 to 10 days, and then they're prompted to ask for their contacts, that's 7 to 10 days or whatever period of time that they could actually be jotting those things down. If they're encouraged, there could be a flyer that we could hand them and say, please write down, volunteer, write down or note down all that, and consider, all the benefits of sharing those contacts and what that does to us, social contract, if you will, as far as trying to keep our friends and our family and our contacts, our workers, everyone safe. So, well, thank you for that. I hope we get some more traction on that. And I listen nationally to the same barriers with states. Governor Inslee just watched a press release from him and saying their biggest challenge is identifying or getting people to forward the contacts. So, this is obviously not unique to Oregon. And it seems to me that, there might be a way to, again, trying to get that in advance and help expedite that. The last thing I wanted to say, or question, I guess, is I was noting, I think I was on Monday or Tuesday, I think, when the OHA daily report came out, and I think they had the record high of 14 deaths or whatever the number was they reported. And I've noticed this before, but I've never really asked the question, but I'm kind of struck with why is it that, for example, I think it was Tuesday, that some of those dates when they it's tragic when everyone loses their life. So I don't want to make light of it. I'm not making light of it at all, but I want to recognize that. But when they're the day they pass away, for example, on Tuesday, which was the 28th, I believe, some of those people that were listed had passed away on July 15th, on July 20th. They're not the same day, and I don't know why they come out in batches like that. And so to speak, there were very few people that actually had really, I think, had passed the day before. So is there a reason why they come out so sporadically?
So interesting that you're asking me that question, because I got that same question from one of our cities, and I told them I would look into it. I have not had a chance to do that. So when I do take a look at that and ask OHA that question, which is an extremely good question, I will get back to the county commissioners and let you know why they're reporting them that way. So I've had that question twice today.
Right. And I also heard that, with this issue with the schools and a lot of parents and obviously a lot of division, not people think that we ought to be going back to school and putting kids in the classroom, and people strongly on the opposite side, not here to opine one way or another. But what's come out of that is that the governor or the OHA is basing that on another metric, which is not on the county indicators, and that is the per capita numbers, right? If you have X amount per capita. So is that a metric that should be part of the county indicators, or is that a metric that is easily found?
So I think it should be either part of the county indicators, or they need a new dashboard that includes schools, because they do it per week. And we have an indicator per 100,000 for all of our cases, but we don't have it per week. So we're hoping that they're going to have another dashboard that is either related to schools or it gets added to our other our county dashboard that we have.
Yeah, it just seems that regardless where you are in that argument about going back to school or not, that I think people are going to want to look at that metric and be able to see it. And because it's county based, at least that's how I'm watching it on the news and seeing it, that it's based on the county numbers. It's not based on school numbers or city numbers. So any insider help on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Nancy. I always appreciate your updates as you stay in the absolute most even tone and perspective as, we talk about refrigerators going out, case numbers, and all the issues of children and families and people getting mental health support. The question that I've been hearing a lot, or the concern, is about kids most likely not going back to school in the fall, which seems that that's going to be the case. And what are families going to do? Especially, there are families that work 2 jobs just to pay the rent, and people that can't work at home, like all of us, we can be at home, but people that are working in service jobs, or they actually leave to go to work to do a job, can't really stay home and educate kids. And I'm just so concerned. We're at this time in not only our state and our county but in the whole country, of an awareness of disparities between people. And here we have a whole group of kids that are really going to suffer in their education. What conversations are happening about what is our ability to support what can we do as a county?
Mhm.
What do we need to be doing? Can you help us as commissioners to help?
Yeah, and that is, yeah, the question of the day, right? And we've had conversations here. We're talking to the schools as well, and all of us know too. Some kids don't go to school; they don't eat. And what do we do about that? So we are working with the schools and providing the support that we can there, um, as well as working, with some of those social supports that we may have available. But unfortunately, of course, it's I don't have any really good answers. I do know that we're working very closely with the schools. We're working with social services, and others to try to help those families that, it's like if they have to go to work and they can't stay home with their children, are there places, that there might be ways that they can figure out how to work together, those types of things. But we are definitely working with the schools to see how we can impact that. But
Well, I
I
would
don't
love
have
to
answers.
know what tangibles, what actual steps we can take to support families, because the economics of the situation is that daycare is very expensive, and especially daycare in a COVID world. And it, it kind of goes back to that, Clackamas County didn't get a direct allocation of dollars, which is so frustrating to me.
Yes.
Because if we did, we could say to you, Nancy, please put aside an emergency fund to help provide childcare for families in the fall when the families have to work, and we could have a prioritized system of who would get support based on need. So it's frustrating to me. I'm just trying to get the word out to people when they say they're frustrated with what's happening. So please just contact your governor, contact your legislators. Please keep the pressure on. Yes. But if you have particular advice for us, please help us know where our advocacy points are so that we can be supportive. This may not be done by November. I mean, as far as the situation with the schools, and then we could be looking at longer. We've got to figure this out. One thing that I was wondering about was very small clusters of children, like even 3 children meeting with an educational assistant for portions of a day, have under the supervision of a teacher to provide some education, even in children's, varying in children's homes or different, just more smaller models that it could be safer. And
yes. And there's some, I don't know if there's a lot of those discussions going on. I know we've had some of those here, but it's like, what does it look like and how do we, make that happen and mobilize it? But it's definitely an issue, and it's definitely a conversation that we're having with our schools.
Ken's hand is up.
Ken.
Thank you. Two things. As you know, we're doing food boxes. Your team is set up for senior citizens that we do on Mondays. Is there a possibility of expanding that to some of the schools for children that could then be passed out or picked up by parents or something like that at the school, or delivered by teachers to specific homes where there's need?
Yeah, yes. And actually we did that in the fall. in the spring. And we worked with the schools to do a food program and said, where do you need some assistance? We will do that again in the fall.
Okay, and I'm certainly willing to continue driving food to different places, so we can work our schedules out a little bit so that, us commissioners can help in that vein. I'm certainly willing to do so. My only other question is ICU beds. How are we doing on that? The obvious reason is, of course, it was about flattening the curve so we didn't overload the system. Right.
So our ICU beds, we do have 51 of them that have 100, out of the 150 that are COVID patients. Ventilators is 27. Statewide, we have 145 adult ICU beds available, and that's out of 763. And we do have 764 ventilators.
How many did you say were available in our region?
Well, not in the region, statewide is 145.
Thank you.
Okay, so Nancy, I have a question in terms of the schools. where are we in terms of going through their plans for reopening? How is that going along? I mean, because that's the key piece.
Yeah, sure. It has been frustrating. It's been a frustrating process because we seem to get some bits and pieces from OHA and then we have to fit it together. We
Okay,
have had, we've had 2 meetings, I think, with the supervisors and 2 meetings with the board's members. Answered
okay,
their questions. We have Q&A out there, and we have 3 staff members, one of them full-time, and I think 2 of them are part-time, working with the schools daily to answer their questions and help them out.
okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Clackamas Workforce Partnership has been one of our nonprofits that's been, I don't know if you've talked to Bridget Daisy, but that's been their top priority as a workforce partnership, because that's one of the things that they're seeing, as Commissioner Fisher said, that even pre-COVID, people were having serious issues either affording childcare or getting childcare. And of course, the COVID has exacerbated all of this. So they've been working on a strategy for a while. And today at Greater Portland Inc., we was one of the folks that we discussed business recovery. And one of the top priorities there, Commissioner Fisher, was also childcare. So it's on everybody's radar right now. And if we can just find the resources, CWP has been, they've been hampered because, again, the federal resources have been dwindling for them. And we don't supply any direct resources to them at this point. But maybe eventually, I'm hopeful that will change. But that will be their main priority. And they're working on it. So let's just keep updated. I agree, it's a huge issue. So anybody else have anything to say at all? Okay, Gary, I guess I'm going to hand it over to you because you've got a couple of things you're going to talk to us about. Thank you, Nancy.
Yes, thank you, Nancy.
Nancy.
Commissioners, on your behalf, I signed 2 agreements under the authority of the COVID-19 Emergency Declaration, number 2020-14. The first was for disaster management and health, housing, and human services. I signed this agreement on July 27th, and you ratified it already this Tuesday, July 28th at your work session. This was authorization for disaster management to sign a Housing and Urban Development COVID-19 CARES Act grant agreement. This is an application for a federal grant of $2.5 million from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. No general funds are involved. The second was for the Finance Department, which I signed on July 24th, 2020. And Commissioners, you ratified this Tuesday, July 28th, 2020. It is an application to the state of Oregon for our second reimbursement request for CARES Act funding in the amount of $1.67 million. These are funds we have spent from our own funds, which we are now seeking reimbursement from the state. Our previous reimbursement request was for $5.6 million, which I'm pleased to share we received the check in the mail this week. So
Good.
this was our second request. And even though you authorized me to sign those agreements on your behalf, I still asked you to ratify it on Tuesday, which you did. So I'm simply reading both of these for the record, and they will be published in your business meeting minutes. I see Commissioner Savas has a question.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Gary, so when you mentioned they come out of our own funds, what bucket or what budget line or what fund do you come from?
Yes, I will ask Nancy to help me, mostly from the general fund, but from various funds through our various departments. And Nancy, if you could please further answer that.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're talking from the CARES dollars that are getting reimbursed, those funds?
Well, I think Gary had mentioned that they're paid, and then as they're waiting for reimbursement, where are the funds coming from
So primarily those funds were general fund dollars. And we're paying for things like anything that we need to pay for COVID. So it's everything, if we have to put these guards in, those types of things, which a lot of it came out of general fund. If we have people working in the Emergency Operations Center, for this event, we get straight time for that. So if they're general funded, it came out of general fund. If it came out of another fund, then we would repay that fund. But a large portion of it came out of general fund.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Gary? So nothing else that you need to tell us at this minute because we're moving right along now. Okay, so we're going to be moving to the consent agenda. And we have removed the consent agenda item A1 for further staff review. So we will ask Mary to read the consent agenda. And when we make a motion, it has to be a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended. So Mary, can you take us through?
Of course. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, the number 1 item was removed. Number 2, approval of a personal services contract with Do Good Multnomah for Veteran Village Services. Approval of a local subrecipient grant agreement with Northwest Family Services to provide evidence-based parenting education classes. Approval of a local subrecipient grant agreement with Clackamas Women's Services to provide evidence-based parenting education classes. Approval of an intergovernmental facility use agreement with the Oregon Trail School District number 46 for the Sandy Clinic. Approval of a subrecipient agreement amendment number 4 with the City of Wilsonville Community Center to provide social services for Clackamas County residents. Approval of amendment number 4 to intergovernmental subrecipient agreement with Friends of Canby Adult Center to provide social services for Clackamas County residents. Approval of a subrecipient agreement amendment number 2 with Senior Citizen Council of Clackamas County to provide social services for Clackamas County residents. And there is no number 9, that's just a typo there.
Okay.
Under the Department of Transportation and Development, approval of addendum number 1 to the 2040 Planning and Development Grant Intergovernmental Agreement with Metro, Clackamas County Park Avenue Development and Design Standard, Contract 935012. Approval of a first amendment to the disposition agreement between Clackamas County and the Blue at Abernathy Creek pertaining to property located at 902 Abernathy Road. Approval of a second amendment to the disposition agreement between Clackamas County and Beaver Creek Structures pertaining to property located at 19314 South Beaver Creek Road. And approval of a contract with DKS Associates for the Clackamas County Regional Freight Intelligent Transportation System project. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Under Central Communications, CCOM, approval of an intergovernmental agreement to provide emergency dispatch services to the Aurora Fire Department. Under Disaster Management, approval of a cooperative agreement with Portland General Electric Company for the activation of the Clackamas County Emergency Notification System. And under North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, approval of amendment number 4 to the interagency agreement between Clackamas County Parks and Recreation District and Health, Housing, and Human Services Social Services Division. Approval of a small grant project agreement 1220003 between North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board for the Boardman and Reinierson Heat Water Enhancement Project. And that concludes today's consent agenda.
All right, colleagues, can I have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Can we take the roll, please, Mary?
Of course. Commissioner Fisher.
Point
Aye.
of order, point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes?
Normally we ask if anybody wants to remove something from that consent
Oh,
agenda.
you're absolutely
prior-
right.
Oh,
Okay, does anybody else want to remove anything else other than what we've already removed? Hearing none. Okay, Mary, let's go. Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
okay.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humberston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
and Chair Schrader.
Aye, thank you. It's been approved. So now I believe, Gary, it's your turn for some communication before we move into public communication.
Actually, Chair, public communication is first. And
Oh, well, let's do it then. Okay. I lost my screen with my script. So public communication, Dylan, then we'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Chair Schrader. I'm Dylan Blaylock with Public and Government Affairs, and I'll be coordinating
Okay.
public comment this evening. If any attendees would like to provide a comment on any matter relating to county business, you can do so now by utilizing the raise hand feature on Zoom. That's at the top or bottom of the Zoom bar, depending on your device. We also do have some phone listeners. If you're on the phone and you would like to give a comment, you can hit *9. That lets me know that you have a hand raised. And Chair Schrader, I do have one email to read as well once we are done with live comment.
Thank you.
So I see that we do have a hand that has gone up, so I'm going to move over. The person's handle is Dr. Catherine Burns. Dr. Burns, if you could unmute yourself and then please go ahead and give your name and your area of residence. It looks, oh, there you go. Give your name, your area of residence. Please keep your comments at 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I don't see my picture as a tile, so I'm.
We can hear you just fine.
You can hear me, but you can't see me either.
Can't see you.
I don't know. Is there something, Dylan, that I can do to make my picture visible?
No, Dr. Burns. It is when we give public comment. It is only
Okay,
audible.
I'm fine with not being visible. So my name is Dr. Catherine Burns. I'm a homeowner and a voter. I live in the Charbonneau district of Clackamas County. I'm here to talk about the Children's Safety Levy. I'm a professor emeritus at the OHSU School of Nursing, where I taught pediatric and family nurse practitioners for about 30 years. I'm also the lead author on a major textbook that was used or is still used by most nurse practitioner programs around the United States. I was the lead author for 6 editions over 25 years, and the 7th edition has been renamed the Burns Pediatric Primary Care in my honor. So I'm also on the board of directors for the Children's Center for Clackamas County, where I've served on the board for about 7 years. My passion is the care of children and their families. I'm speaking to you as an advocate for children and their health care, including both their physical and their emotional care. About 1 in 10 children in the United States experience child abuse before their 18th birthday. Sexual abuse is most common, but abuse can be physical or emotional in nature. Abuse is often a silent problem. We often consider it to be a stigma, something to be ashamed of. Children and families shouldn't feel guilty about something as traumatic as child abuse that they are enduring. Many studies have shown that adverse childhood experiences or toxic stressors really affect the individual over the lifetime. Heart disease, obesity, depression, diabetes, cancer, injury, and substance abuse, they're all part of the toxic stressors that affect health. Poor education and job opportunities, violence that the perpetrators are experiencing, teen pregnancy, sex trafficking are all part of the other effects that or outcomes that affect all of us. There are great economic and societal costs to communities from child abuse, including the intergenerational outcomes. Child abuse can be prevented through strengthening family supports, promoting social norms that protect against violence and adversity, and ensuring a strong start to life and connecting youth with services that are all helpful. At Children's Center, there are highly trained professionals who help children and families through the crisis of abuse. But they also provide long-term therapy and prevention services to our communities. Our prevention program has provided education to many thousands in our communities in this county over the past few years, helping to reduce the likelihood that child abuse will happen again. We also know that as a more hopefully temporary problem, But we have a pandemic going on, which means that children are being isolated and at home rather than being in situations where their plight could be identified. More needs to be done for the families and for our children. The levy that we're asking for to be put on the ballot will allow voters to decide on stronger community support for nonprofits for services to support these vulnerable children and families that live among us. We can change their lives for the better forever. The Children's Center needs to be put on a more predictable, solid financial foundation. The current county budget allocation helps, but it means that we're continually on a treadmill seeking private donations. Private donations make up more than 50% of our budget. That's not the way to support an essential community service. We can do better. We're asking that you decide that the levy can go on the ballot. Health and safety of our citizens are basic services that we all have a moral and ethical responsibility to fulfill. Polling has showed us that greater than 73% of Clackamas County voters support the 5-year children's safety levy. Please help us put that levy on the ballot. Thank you very much.
Well, Doctor, I'd like to thank you for a couple of reasons, if I can just say a few words. Both my mother and father were nurses growing up, and my mother has a birthing center named after her because when she was basically a nurse who was running the hospital in the evening, she was a supervisor, and when it was a quiet evening, she'd always go to where the babies were and gown up and hold the babies. So I remember that, and it's called the Florence Northam Birthing Center in Tarrytown, New York at Tarrytown Hospital. And I want to thank you for your support as a board member. Way back in 2003, Diane Westcott, Rena Adamek, Scott Palmer, John Foote and I got together and came up with the idea of this and started the original fundraisers. And I remember doing many fundraisers with both Rena and Diane. Diane is gone. Scott moved on to Oregon State. John is retiring this year. And I do believe that Rena is now working for Legacy Systems. At the time, what we did was partner with Providence Hospital to really start this initiative going. So I want to thank you for your service, and it's a privilege to see this institution continue to move forward with things. And I believe that we are looking at a framework right now, and I think that's what remains to be really kind of looked at very closely at this point. So thank you for your comments. And colleagues, do you have any comments you'd like to make? Yes, Mr. Savas.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Burns and all the people that have been behind and supportive of the Children's Center. I remember my first visit there about 10 years ago and learning more about the work you do there. And it's very sombering when people realize that what takes place and why that Children's Center is there, and to think that children are abused like that is it's just a sad state of affairs. It is great work. It's very sombering when you think about what happens to folks, and children are our most precious asset we have. And I just want to cite for anyone who's watching, may not be aware, but the board did vote on Tuesday unanimously to move forward on the framework. So again, thank you to everyone who's been involved with the Children's Center.
Well, thank you for that. And Dylan, have we got anybody else on?
Yes, we do, Chair. And thank you for that comment, Dr. Burns.
Okay.
Next, I'm going to bring over, the handle is just maybe either Nunpa or Noonpa. My apologies if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But if you could please, you are on. I see you've unmuted yourself. That's great. If you could please give your name, your area, and keep your comment to under 3 minutes. Thank you very much. If you're there, we're looking for the person whose handle is Nunpa or Noonpa. I saw that you did you unmiked yourself.
Unmute myself.
Okay, thank you. If you could please give your name, your area, and keep your comment to under 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Did you see someone there, but are they muted?
No, they are not. So it could be that they're having a problem with their microphone. Well, we are going to, I'm going to go ahead and hopefully that person can resolve that pretty quickly here. I'll come back to them in a second, Chair Schrader, and I will go ahead and move to the email that we received. It is from Martha Spires in Oregon City. Commissioners, I serve on the Oregon City School District Board of Directors, and in my day job, I'm the executive director of a free medical clinic serving uninsured primary Latinx essential workers in our county. These two positions have left me acutely aware that Clackamas County's need for children's safety services has never been greater, especially in historically disadvantaged communities. As schools start the fall with distance learning, we need to take care of the most vulnerable and under-resourced children and families in our community. The coronavirus has shone a bright light on the inadequacy of our social safety net infrastructure. Schools, already underfunded and overburdened, can't do this alone. Nonprofits are essential partners in helping support families whose parents are working, families with limited English proficiency, families with children with special needs, the families least able to weather this storm. Last week, Commissioner Fisher read from Dr. King's letter from the Birmingham jail. I very much appreciate her bringing his voice into the commission hearing room. The part of the quote that struck me particularly was, quote, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied by a single garment of destiny," end quote. The coronavirus has stripped this truth bare. Nonprofits are an essential thread in our garment of destiny. Children are our future. I am writing to ask you to give the Clackamas Children's Safety Levy a chance by referring it to the ballot in November. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input. Martha Spires.
Okay. Thank you, Martha.
Okay.
I think I just donated to the clinic, actually. I think Mayor Norris got a hold of me. So glad that you are able to contact us. Dylan, anybody else?
Yes, I see a couple of hands, but I'm going to try to go back to, it's either Nunpa or Noonpa, and I see they have de-mic themselves. Maybe they're working now. Is someone there?
Yeah, does it work?
Very good. Thank you.
Hey, very good.
If you
Hey,
could
thank you.
provide
My name is Nunpa or Noonpa. Yes, I am the executive director of Ant Farm in Sandy, and I love my job. I'll tell you that right off the bat. I live up on the mountain. I'm a licensed occupational therapist, and 10 years ago, as I was driving through Sandy, I was noticing kids on the street because I was working in downtown Portland. I managed a lot of large operations in the mental health and addictions industry. So I decided to quit my job in the recession, which was kind of a silly idea, but I did it. Started Ant Farm, and now we're pretty vibrant in what we do in Northeast Clackamas County. So a little bit about the background of that. I am also calling specifically about the Children's Safety Levy because as a grassroots nonprofit that's just been doing a lot of work, we have 10 real active programs. We're in both Oregon Trail and Estacada School District. In fact, this summer, with Estacada, we're reaching out to all those young people that did not make it into virtual school. So it's a super cool project, reaching out to families and kids. We also are a recipient for prevention specialists in both Estacada and Sandy, a drug and alcohol counselor in both Estacada and Sandy, and then currently moving into the work with the homeless folks. We're in the process of finishing up our agreement with the county that you all are probably aware of to provide this COVID relief. We'll be doing COVID relief for all those really hit economically as well as with illness. So the reason I share all this is that, again, we're super grassroots and have not really been in the middle of things. But I can tell you about the homeless kids in Mining Park. I can tell you about the kids down on the Clackamas River. And when I have been a part of listening and paying attention to the safety net levy, I'm one of those executive directors that will push really hard and do whatever I got to do to make sure that we help our kids and our families. And yet we work really super hard. I think after 10 years, just a year ago, I was able to finally afford insurance, medical insurance for our employees. And I'm so proud of that because these people work tirelessly and super, super hard. And yet, I'm willing to do it, and I'm not going to complain about anything. So for me, I guess I really want to say that when I look at the kids out there right now, the demand is far greater than any of us could ever provide. And so providing these really safe places where we're reaching out and connecting to them and helping them navigate the world. And obviously COVID is a whole nother mix in this thing, but just in general purposes. There's quite a group of kids that run between Estacada and Sandy. And when I say they run, they really do. They move back and forth. A lot of what we would call homeless kids that are couch surfing. And we know them all. At this point, it's pretty exciting to be able to connect to them. But honestly, the funds and the funding and that, we just need to keep doing it from our hearts because it's not always really there. So I guess I felt strongly enough, which I typically never do, coming on this and just really speaking about how important this is to me and to our community. And when I think a lot about, like, we're a Blueprint and a small grant recipient as well. And when I think a lot about access to care, the culture of health and all the Blueprint focus, like really quote unquote healthy behaviors, this couldn't fit more perfectly. The levy and the focus of it couldn't fit more perfectly into the county's objectives. Recently, I've been asked to facilitate the Estacada Design Lab. And I'm super excited about that project as well, because there's a lot of need and we're trying to really engage as well. This is designed by you folks, but it's really designed to create community involvement. And how do you kind of fix your own problems? And how do we work together as community? So yeah, I'm kind of probably babbling now a little bit, but I just really want to say thank you for your hard work and what you're doing, not only in this crisis, but in just the work you do. To say that we're going to keep showing up, whether the levy passes or not, or even whether it gets on the ballot. But I hope that you will vote to get it on the ballot because I think it's worthy. Thank you so much.
I want to thank the folks that are speaking. Normally we limit to 3 minutes. I am being a little liberal with letting people express their opinions. But Dylan, anybody else? Ready to go?
Yes,
okay.
Chair, we've got one more. And
okay.
the handle, I believe, is a local organization. So we're really going to have the individual identify themselves because the handle is Todos Juntos. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Juntos maybe. So whoever is there, if you could please give your name, your area, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eric Johnston, and Dylan, you're close. It's Todos Juntos. The J is a silent sound. But Todos Juntos has been in rural Clackamas County since 2000. We have staff housed in the elementary and middle schools of Canby, Molalla, Sandy, and Estacada. And as of 3 years ago, we have staff now housed at the Estacada High School. We have a lot, we do early learning, we do middle school PreventNet, and we also do family resource coordination and parent education. And for a number of years, our biggest struggle is to identify those supports, in school and after school supports for students that are falling through the cracks. Many of the kids we work with have social emotional needs, and they also suffer from academic failure or, just not understanding the homework assignments. Hopefully I support the levy. The children's safety levy. So in November, if you could put on the ballot, what that would do for nonprofits, it would just add, ongoing stable funding, which we don't have right now. One of the worst things you could do, and I work really hard to identify those other funding sources that can maintain our programming for those youth. But if you're if you only get a year's worth of funding, or hopefully 3 years worth of funding, that's fantastic. But sustainability is really what we're talking about here. And so, I think all nonprofits would really appreciate that sustainable funding. So thank you all for what you do. And that's it. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Dylan, anyone else? Any emails?
No other emails. We usually give one last call for anybody to raise their hand on Zoom. If you have anything, or the people who are on the phone, you can hit *9. Seeing none, Chair.
All righty, so Gary, now we finally turn it over to you for Commissioner, excuse me, Administrator Communication.
Thank you, Chair Schrader. I always like to share good news of the good work our county employees do, and tonight is no exception. First, a grateful customer of Clackamas Water Environment Services, or WES, recently called or contacted us to thank 2 WES employees for recovering a precious family heirloom from a catch basin.
Wow.
Ratepayer Emily and her 4-year-old daughter somehow got a hold of a cherished family ring that belonged to Emily's grandfather. The child was playing with the ring outside of her Happy Valley home when it slipped off the child's finger and ended up in the catch basin. Emily called WES for help, and our WES employees, Kevin Rotrock and Jeremy Boatner, managed to retrieve the jewelry after a lot of work. Emily wrote to us, "I was so impressed by the amazing efforts of the guys to help us out and to also teach my daughter a lesson about toilets and sewers. It speaks volumes about the kind of people who work at WES." So thank you, Emily, for the note. Thank you to Kevin and Jeremy for their excellent customer service and dedication to our public. Next, members of our Clackamas County Weatherization crew, Rod, Michael, and Levi, volunteered their time and expertise to local nonprofit Catalyst Partnerships Northwest, a nonprofit that helps repair homes of disadvantaged low-income residents. And our staff helped with a roof and gutter replacement on the mobile home of an elderly man living with a disability in Milwaukee. The roof was in terrible shape, was leaking in several places, and the gutters were completely rusted out. The homeowner's family contributed to the cost of materials, and our county volunteers installed the roof at no cost. So thank you to Rod, Michael, and Levi, also for your excellent customer service and serving the public of Clackamas County. Just 2 examples of many of the good work of our great county employees. Thank you, Chair Schrader.
All right. So commissioners, now we're on to Commissioner Communication, and first up is Commissioner Hubbardston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief, but everybody stay tuned. It looks like the movie theater, drive-in movie theater in Canby will be opening in about a week. They will be announcing their formal things. I hope everybody goes there, and I know I intend to be there. I want to see it. I haven't been to a drive-in movie in a long time, so I think that'll be fun, and it's very creative thinking on their part to figure out how to keep that fair and event center going. The only other thing I have is to let people know what CBX is doing. CBX is our dark fiber organization here in Clackamas County, part of our technology services group. It comes from a grant that the federal government gave to Clackamas County about 10 years ago. We are now providing internet access to over 270 businesses, county offices and businesses, not businesses, but county facilities. That's the word I was looking for. As well as partnering in our neighboring counties on a couple of issues. It is a profit-making enterprise for Clackamas County. We are expanding that service in a partnership with Sandy Net in what's known as the Kiwanis Project to 134 homes in a rural area here in Clackamas County. And they will be able to get 300 megs of internet service up and down for about $65 a month, or a gig of service for somewhere around $85 a month. Our long-term goal of having high-speed internet for every home and business in Clackamas County moves forward, and I hope to be here when we complete this project. So thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Schrader. So it's so nice seeing everyone. I don't know about you, but I'm really hot. My air conditioner is not working, and it is really warm outside and really warm in my house. But I've got my fan blowing on me, and I keep putting my hair up and down, and it's summertime. And what a different type of summer it is with COVID-19. I want to say that I was especially inspired tonight by our citizen communication, the level of commitment and passion for children in our community is just really wonderful. And at this time, especially during COVID-19, we know that our kids are the ones that are struggling through this time. Kids that aren't able to go to school, there aren't childcare. There's been outbreaks of COVID in childcare settings in Clackamas County. There's concern about how parents are going to educate kids. Families are stressed. It's really, really difficult times. Our wonderful administrator Schmidt forwarded us. I don't know if all of the commissioners saw it, and I know we are going to be talking about this on Tuesday, but a flyer for the Yes for Clackamas Kids. Did everybody see that Gary forwarded it to us?
Not yet.
No. Just a couple little highlights from that flyer, and I'm sure there'll be more that we will see about it. But some compelling things about what is being proposed is that all the dollars would be kept local, that there are as many as 2,000 Clackamas County children are suspected of victims or abuse or neglect, according to Oregon DHS, and that 73% of likely Clackamas voters support the 5-year children's safety levy. And it would go for things like emergency shelter, case management, mental health counseling, parenting support, education, skill building, and it would cost the average household less than $4 a month. I just wanted to mention that, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation coming up on Tuesday. I'm interested, and I'm hoping that all the questions, there were so many questions that we all raised earlier in the week, that we can have answers for those, especially questions that Commissioner Schrader mentioned about governance, about accountability, about community building, about who's been involved, what's the coalition, where's the consensus, do we have buy-in, all of those very important questions. So I look forward to having a deeper conversation about it. So whenever we have these conversations, and I especially think about children, the little quote goes into my mind, and it was Mahatma Gandhi who said, "A nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members." And so I would like to say that Clackamas County, and we have an incredible heart in Clackamas County, that Clackamas County greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members. And we have tremendous values of equity and of caring, and we really do good work here. So I'm looking forward to us looking at our other values of trust in government, and I'm hoping that we can all be comfortable and push this through to the November ballot, but we have our work to do, and it's a quick timeline that we've got to all come together and do that. So that's what I have for tonight.
Okay, Commissioner Savas, you're up. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Schrader. Just wanted to, as last week, I think I mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit about maybe each week, a couple businesses that have closed as a result of the financial and economic impacts of COVID. And locally, we had the Bonner Restaurant, long-standing business for a very, very long time, was struggling as a result of some other economic impacts due to some other tax measures and other pressures that have been put on businesses. And I think this is probably the one that probably was the final straw for them. Driving down 82nd Avenue the other day, noticed that Old Chicago Restaurant has closed, as well as Pier 1 Imports. I don't know if that was a nationwide as well, but at least locally, those are just three. And next week I'll name a few. Building a little bit on the conversation with the children's levy and the concerns there, I certainly hope that the homeless services support measure that passed can help augment a lot of those needs for homeless children and homeless families. It's just kind of mind-boggling to think that there are so many families that are struggling. I'm certainly noticing a lot more people living in cars, and that is a growing reality. And it's just heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. The fact that it is growing and is getting worse, it seems, and not having enough resources to cope with that, amongst all the other pressures that are happening right now. A number of people that are not able to pay their rents, and I think come September, absent any other funding to help people stay in their homes, there could be a pretty significant wave. And this is, of course, coast to coast. This is not unique to Oregon. Along that lines, I just never fathomed that 10 years ago that we would be in this place. And, no one could have predicted, number one, the COVID thing, even prior to COVID, that we would have so many people falling in homelessness and that poverty issue would be so severe. And I reckon back to 2005 when I sat on MPAC, Metro Policy Advisory Committee. Martha sits on there today. But I served on there from 2005, 6, and 7. And I remember seeing a survey, and the survey was basically showing what the trends might be. And poverty was something that was very real. And we were watching the average family wage income diminishing in comparative to the cost of living, the average rents and so forth. And Metro had taken an initiative basically to say, well, people are spending $2,000 a year on transportation. If we could reduce that by $700 or $800 and people don't need to rely on cars, that would be a great thing, or just relieve those financial pressures on the families. And so, it was more of a doubling down, so to speak, on providing transit service. And that was in 2005, 6. And here we sit today. And, that $800 or $1,000 a year in savings is completely overrun, if you will, by the cost of living. The rent for an apartment back in 2005 in our local area was about $700, and now it's more like $1,200. That's $500, $600 increases per month times 12. That's $6,000 a year. Well, that is far greater impact, and that's why affordability needs to be a focus for us. And while I hear a lot of folks talk about gentrification or over gentrification or displacement or any displacement policies, we have got to really think about how we maintain people in the homes they have. In severe areas of California, there's a saying down there, it says the most affordable housing is the existing housing. To tear it down or refurbish it is far more costly, and the net result is that it just simply costs more money. There's not enough money to build enough housing, in Oregon or in this metro area. So we got to make the best of what we can, and we got to leverage, the homeless measure. We need to leverage the housing measure that passed. We need to leverage everything we can, but that's still not going to be enough. I think that's why it's so important going forward that we look really, really hard at and seriously at how we cope with this affordability issue. And I believe, Gary, we decided a couple of weeks ago we were going to move forward on some anti-displacement work session.
Yes.
Is that scheduled anytime soon?
Not scheduled yet, but it will be shortly here, yes.
Okay. And, I have made commitments to a lot of people that want to hear more about it. I've made commitments to the Reimagine group. And it's something that I've been working on for several years. As I watch people in my community, schools that are now Title I schools where they were not Title I before, our area is falling deeper into poverty. These are very serious social issues, and it's not unique to this area. There's all areas in rural Clackamas County that are suffering as well. So we really need to be mindful about, with the limited resources we have, how we get the biggest bang for the buck. So I think the best thing we can think about really long-term for our predecessors for our future generations is getting in front of preventing spikes in affordability, preventing displacement. And the earlier we act on that, I think the better the payoff is in the long run. So I will close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. So I guess I get the last word. For good, I hope. I was really proud of our human services folks last week, because, you know, what I've been worried about for a while is a lot of our housing services and dollars have been really going for urban and suburban areas. And they found, and Gary, help me, I don't know, I don't remember the name of the organization, the nonprofit, but we just are transferring farm worker housing in Malala to this nonprofit, because they know how to get the USDA dollars for rural housing. And when I talked to Rich and Jill about that, they said, yeah, it's different, it's complicated. It wasn't really in their wheelhouse, but now that they have found a nonprofit that actually is in the wheelhouse, I have to say, I'm feeling as if our rural areas are going to, you know, that once we can kind of meet with these folks, I think there can be some really good partnerships for housing and workforce housing in our rural areas as well. And again, I want to continue to work with Clackamas Workforce Partnership on their issue of childcare. And I'm hopeful that as we move forward with services, again, to really, really include our school districts, our superintendents, who have always talked about a need for after-school programs, which is in itself kind of a form of daycare as well, should the schools open. So I'm hopeful we can have a continued conversation about that as we move forward. So I'm going to end with a bit of history tonight, because I'm still reading Stamped from the Beginning. I'm still in the 1860s portion of it, and this is by Dr. Kendall. And he talks about in October 1859, when abolitionist John Brown and his 19-man interracial battalion captured the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, 60 miles northwest of Washington, D.C. And here's the historical tidbit that I didn't realize. General Harriet Tubman, who was one of, the Underground Railroad, who did so much, was unable to come as planned, probably because she was suffering from one of her recurring fevers. Brown could have used her ingenuity. He selected an area of small-scale farms instead of massive plantations, where he could have armed thousands and plotted the next stage of his revolt. Marines led by Colonel Robert E. Lee crushed the rebellion instead and apprehended Brown. 17 people perished, and of course John Brown was hanged for what at that time was seen as a crime. And what this exhibits is, at that period, is how tense. We think it's tense now. It was so tense then as well, as they were moving through the 1860s, kind of moving bit by bit towards what would become our Civil War. So more to come on that. It's a great book. I really advise people, if you really want to understand, institutionalize what that really means, racism, this is a really good resource for everybody. So with that, I'll say goodbye to my commissioners. Have a great weekend. Stay cool. Enjoy the night's weather, but try not to get too hot. And I want to thank you all. It's been a privilege to work with all of you. And it's really one of the best teams I've ever worked with. Oh, we have our differences, but they don't matter in the end. In the end, we all work for the same goal for the citizens of our county. So anyway, goodbye, folks.
Good night.